when I developed that gnosis, it was actually through mystical medicine experiences. I got blown open. My emergence into enlightenment was not at all what I was expecting.
Well, good. I'm glad you're telling this story, because the next question I was going to ask was, did you have some kind of initiation?
Yes.
Please tell, if you're willing.
Yeah. So a part of what I feel my purpose is here is to really help awaken the world into God consciousness or oneness. And what I was specifically shown, literally through every part of my energy field, very much so the physical body. Source, if Source gave you all of Source's information in your physical body, you'd blow up. There's you can't store that much information in your capacity.
Yep.
I was given as much as would not kill me.
Yep.
And nothing less. So because of that,
you're like, nothing less. I about short-circuited.
Yeah, I short-circuited. I literally short-circuited my meridians. And so after that, I was like in this weird wonky land, which I understand now is actually initiations after enlightenment, because a lot of times people think enlightenment is this like end deal, and it's not. As a matter of fact, enlightenment can even be looked at as a springboard. It's like, okay, you understand we're all one. There's, like for people who are truly enlightened, put it this way, it's not that big of a deal. It's kind of like, it's the standard. It's like
define. Can you define enlightenment then?
Yeah. Enlightenment is to understand that you are the other person and the other person is you. You're different expressions of Source. So you are the all, but you are also an ambassador of the all, all. So I'm, we were talking about names earlier. I'm Sarah.
Yeah.
After enlightenment, I had to go, I'm Sarah. How funny.
You're like, this fractal of Source is called Sarah.
Yeah. I was like, oh, I'm a human. I'm playing human right now.
Right.
So yeah, there was a deep integration. I'm talking years. And it could have integrated better. It could have integrated stronger had there been like more just baseline nutrition support, like physical things going on. But yeah, that's one of the things I tell a lot to my clients, or when I'm at my events and I speak to people about when they have questions. A lot of the times I try to bring them back into like, hey, how are you caring for the physical body? Because it's going through a lot right now. It's not just a metaphysical awakening that's happening. Like the body needs to be supported through this, or else it can't even house that much information in a congruent and clear way.
I'm curious, and you can feel free to answer whatever is comfortable for you, but I talk about it fairly regularly on the show and I ask a lot of questions about plant medicine, and I feel like I think that's what you alluded to. Yeah. So I'm curious what it was, if you're willing to share. But I've found that there's gateways to other realities in a sober sense, and you can do that through. I mean, shoot, I had a transcendental experience with a dog on the beach in Mexico, but you can do that through meditation and various different things, or you can kind of more guarantee the door with some plant medicines, or at least like make it highly probable. I still think that when your guard is up and you're not able to surrender, it still makes those portals and those gateways to other realities still very difficult to access. But I've found so much what feels like very occult information within them. And truly my deepest question is in life is, what is this reality? Because when I understand what this reality is, I know how to play the game. Tell me more if you're willing, like what kind of ceremony was it? And, there's also so much around ceremony right now, or about plant medicines with psilocybin and ayahuasca and peyote and various different medicines that I think people need to know the gravity of them. And, if that was something that interested in them, it's good to know the right way to go about it too.
Yeah. So one thing that made me a perfect match to the ceremony being a way for source to kind of like touch me, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
was the fact that I have a very broad bandwidth, meaning that, for instance, just one example is in esotericism, Lucifer, for instance, isn't such a bad guy. He's like a frenzied force. He comes with divine revelation. He's revered.
Mm.
There's also a downside, obviously, but that's like more carnalism, more hedonism. The way that this character is portrayed in the exoteric realm, in the mainstream, is completely off base. It's linked with the devil or Satan and all these things. No, Luciferian energy is one that needs to be harnessed. You have to make sure that you can harness it. But it's one that definitely is so revered in esotericism because it's all about gnosis. So that one example of the fact that I have very little fear around concepts where most people have a lot of blocks and fears is just one small example. I could go on, but really of the fact that the more we're able to understand complexity and the more we're able to hold nuance and really like worlds at the same time, we're able to be, for lack of a better term, more useful when we're in ceremony or when we're communing or whatever, because if we're looking for a true awakening, we're going to have to embody that, right? And that embodiment, there's a huge gap between the mental awakening and the embodiment awakening.
Totally.
And so because of that, the embodiment awakening journey looks like completely different than the mental awakening journey. So to answer your question, I was in ceremony at that time with psilocybin. I had done that several times before. And the only thing I could think of that made that time particularly ripe is the fact that I was with two very high vibrating friends. So I kind of look at them as like antennas that I didn't know I was getting myself into.
Yeah.
It broke me. It was not even like, it was nothing wild. It was no dose that like, I was super like, oh man, you're doing a heroes thing. It was just, to me, very standard. I went in with the intention to meet my ancestors, something that was pretty grounded for me at the time. I met my ancestors, all right. So I lost my mind in this tent to the point where I had PTSD for months later, where I'd wake up in the middle of the night and think I'm still in the tent. So it became like the tent for me. Oof. But it broke my mind. And I all of a sudden was processing all this information about source. I wrote poetry about it. I could not ground worth anything. And I kept talking to the people who were in the tent with me as though they were on the same level of consciousness with me. So we were a group consciousness, and I kept looking at them. And we were all, well, I found out later they didn't know that any of this was going on. They just saw that I left.
Were you actually talking to them, or was your perception that you were?
I was talking to them.
Okay.
But everything that I said, they took it from their level of reality. But I thought that they were at my level of reality, and they weren't. So I was processing source, and source was showing me, look, this is not only who you are, this is what's going on. And I started getting a bunch of information about what's going on. And I'm like, and then I got a bunch of shame because of all the wars taking place on Earth. And I was like, oh my God, because I'm God. I was like, I'm so much drama. Oh, I'm so much. And I got like complete shame for all of the conflict that I started. And then it was telling me that like, you have to come here and do what you're going to do. Like you have to come speak and teach. And I told the other two, which I thought we were all on the same page, and we weren't. I told them, why do I have to be the one to take form? And I was so mad and bitter. And I didn't want to be the one to be in form. I wanted to be, I guess, at the time, one of them that relay information to the one who takes form. So I felt like I got the short stick, like we all drew. And I was like, and they didn't know, they were like, what, do you need to go to the bathroom? But for me, I was like reconciling something at a higher plane of consciousness. So I was turning to them and I was like, I don't want to be the one to take form. And I just felt like the whole consciousness funneled in and said, Sarah will be your name. Like, does that make sense?
What did reality seem like in that space? What was reality as you learned it?
Yeah, I had never seen it that way before. It was all etheric. It was all like, if I was looking at you right now, you would look like almost translucid. Everything looked completely translucid. And even source came in a very like cliche, typical Bible-ish way.
Uh-huh.
Very translucent light came from, yeah. Have you ever seen the movie? I believe it's called The Nines with Ryan Reynolds.
No.
Okay. So after I had that experience later on, I saw the
I'm going to watch it now, but
yeah, no, you have to. And then I tripped out even more because that movie was about, I don't know if I should spoil it for you, but essentially it was very similar to my experience. And I was already trying to integrate my experience. So once I saw that, that to me was like, no, you cannot. When you integrate it, that does not mean you cannot pretend that this wasn't real. So once I saw that movie, I was like, oh no, this is my new level of reality. I have to play at this level of reality. So my enlightenment, and I say that with no ego, because like I said, enlightenment to me is not a big deal. And I know that there's a lot of taboo around that word. And I think that that taboo is there for a good reason. I can see, that's the problem now. I can see everyone's perception. I can see why people have, boundaries up against that word. And I think that those boundaries, for the most part, the overwhelming majority of the reason why we have an aversion to enlightenment is because of, really toxic teachings that have been passed down throughout the ages that with, like the typical guru type. Mm-hmm. However, enlightenment is, if there were another name, I'd just use that name because to me, I don't care about the name. So I'm using the name enlightenment because we can all kind of like agree that when I'm saying that it's talking about a specific level of reality. Mm-hmm. And so for me, it just was years process of integrating that new level of reality. And now it's just, I'm more grounded.
If you like this clip and you want to hear the whole episode, click at the bottom of your screen.